Regional School Committee meeting of February 13th, 2019 in the Triton High School Library at 7 p.m. This meeting is being audio and video recorded, which is a huge step forward. Thank you guys for working out the glitches on that. I'm going to read aloud the vision statement. We're a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners, students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. If I could please have you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is to the rear.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all. All right. Chairpersons Remarks. I don't have much to say tonight since we've been meeting, it feels like very, very frequently lately. Yeah. Excuse me. I did want to note that at the last meeting, I believe it was, we said that Brian and I were going to go to the Raleigh Finance Committee meeting last night. Due to the weather, it was canceled, so that'll be rescheduled at some point down the road, and I'll try to let you know when that gets rescheduled. I did also just want to note, because I thought it was kind of a really cool full circle sort of thing, the vaping article that was in the Daily News. It was very interesting to see the Triton Voice put out a vaping article and then have the Daily News pick that right up and make that a front page story in the Daily News. And I was particularly, when I saw it first thing in the morning, I saw it on Twitter, and it was Jim Sullivan, who was the reporter, and his comment was, some stories are just a lot of fun to work and make you feel really good about the future. And I thought that was just a really nice, thing to see. So. Oral communications from the public. Anybody? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. I will read aloud the donations, which are item G. Noting the following donations with appreciation. 8 stack chairs valued at $270.16, donated by the Triton Education Foundation to replace the worn-out chairs in the Newbury Elementary School Special Education Office, and a check in the amount of $1,000 donated by the Triton Education Foundation to support students with preparation for state MCAS testing. Thank you very much to the Triton Education Foundation. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I have a question.
Sorry, go ahead, Linda.
I just wanted to ask what that $1,000 for the MCAS, how are we preparing students with that money?
$200 of that is going to a retake coordinator for anyone who has to retake their MCAS test, and then the remaining funds are going to MCAS tutoring for students directly.
Okay, thank you.
Just confirm, we used to have a grant that was like $7,000, $8,000 that covered those costs, and that grant has disappeared. So we're a fraction of what we used to be able to provide.
Question. For the MCAS tutoring, is it for certain students? And
yes, it's for those students who have not previously passed the MCAS, whether it be science, math, or ELA. And this year they tried to do it differently because there were no late buses, where they tried to have opportunities within the school day for students to access help and support. So
that was my other question.
Yeah.
For those kids, if
Yep.
there's no late buses, how will they get it?
yeah,
Okay.
and that's the way they are. And I'm not quite sure what their the results have been so far.
Okay.
As far as
Perfect. Okay, that's it.
All right. Any further discussion? Questions? All right. All in favor? Unanimous vote. Thank you very much. And we are moving on to the student advisory report from the fabulous Olivia Valley.
Midterms went from Tuesday, January 22nd to Friday, January 25th, where students were tested on what they've learned throughout this half of the year. Students were really thankful to teachers who offered after-school help sessions in the days leading up to the tests. Triton senior class officers are selling carnations at lunch for Valentine's Day to fundraise for their class as graduation approaches. Triton High School will be promoting Triton's Parent-Teacher Association's Random Acts of Kindness Week through Ms. Scott and her community service members. Students are encouraged to wear specific colors each day and then complete a corresponding act of kindness. For example, Monday was wearing yellow and thanking your bus driver. February vacation is approaching from Monday, February 18th to Friday, February 22nd. Sure to be filled with continual rehearsal, practice, and for seniors, scholarship applications. Triton High School's Student Council plans to hold the first Viking Day of Giving on Saturday, March 16th. This would be a day where all students and faculty are encouraged to come in and help improve the school. Student Council is looking for volunteers and donations of time, food, and money to work on these projects. Student Council sent out an online survey that 171 students took during advisory to gauge how important different projects are to the students. The highest priority among the students was to fix the bathrooms. For a while, the boys' bathroom had been out of service on the first floor, but already the first floor boys' bathroom is being fixed and will be open for use by the end of this week or upon returning from vacation. Students voted to fix leaky windows and floors at 42.1%, the highest priority, both for visual improvement and in hopes that it will help regulate the temperatures in classrooms. Student Council has decided that this project is too much to ask of volunteers, so instead other projects that were voted high priority will be focused on. This includes fixing up the courtyards, painting areas of discoloration in the school with navy and Carolina blue paint. Other things students voted that they would like to see happen include improving the locker rooms and creating an area to showcase student work like trophies and awards. Student Council hopes that with parents and local businesses donating their time and abilities, they can accomplish some of these projects. A letter was sent out to the community to inform everyone about the plans and how to help, and their goal is to improve overall school spirit by having students from every club, athletics, as well as fine and practical arts, gain more pride for the school by helping to improve it. Thank you, and please ask any questions.
Thank you, Olivia. Questions? Comments? All right. I'll just comment on the Day of Giving. I've actually already emailed Stacey Bolio to say that I intend to help that day, and I would love to see some other committee members. I know that's a big commitment to be able to come in on a Saturday, but if you're free and you can, I think it's a great thing that we can do. It's the Day of Giving. Yes. Yes.
It's Friday as well, so it's Friday afternoon, the 15th.
Yep, the day before as well.
And then all day Saturday, the 16th of March.
Yes.
I was also going to say, so you don't have a printed copy of Olivia's report. It was sent out on Monday, and then Patty had to leave suddenly not feeling well today. And so I was saying to him, going, what did we miss? We forgot to print that out. So we'll get you a copy.
We have the electronic copies. I'm pretty sure we can.
I would love to live electronically.
I know.
I'm saying that.
Not a secret. All right. Excellent. Well, thank you, Olivia. I appreciate it. If
Olivia.
you want to hang out, you're more than welcome. If not, we totally understand. All right. New business. Anyone? All right. Excellent. Moving on to, actually, we had the discussion earlier today, wondering if it might make sense to move the budget deliberation and approval earlier, considering, I believe, probably some of our audience is here specifically for that. Is there any objection to moving that earlier in the agenda? All right. Excellent. Moving on to the budget then.
So I'm going to pass this right to Michelle. I'm just going to queue it up while she's grabbing her papers. There's a little bit of new information. Again, the overall number didn't change, but I'll have her outline the document that you now have in your packet that, by and large, codifies the discussions we've had to this point. So.
Thank you. And yes, this is hot off the presses this morning, so I wish you all had this in your hands in advance, so I do apologize. But it's all together now, and as Brian stated, it's pretty much everything that we have discussed over the past few weeks. There have been a couple of changes, and we can start on page 1, going through those changes. Just as it was a couple weeks ago, our total salary changes total $947,871. That's increased over last year's or the current year's budget. And the total non-salary changes still total $773,187 for a total of $1,721,058, which is the figure we have been discussing for the past few weeks. The one big change is found on lines 25 and 26. I wouldn't say it's a really big change, but we have been looking at some of the items in the IT budget. Some of them are still under discussion, but at this point, we have removed the iPads. We have left the Chromebooks in, and the IT director did agree that it made sense to remove the iPads at this point, the lease for the iPads. And we're also proposing to move the G Suite backup and the media backup. That would allow us to reinstate late buses at the middle school, high school campus for 2 days per week for the entire school year. It just happens that that is the exact dollar figure within $100 that would allow that. So at this point, we have made those changes in here. It's not to say that that's what's going to be approved tonight, but just for discussion purposes, we've made that change at this point. And anything that is approved tonight will certainly be changed tomorrow, if it's not as is outlined in the document right now.
I try not to
I know
talk.
you want to say
So
something.
just quickly, just to clarify, because this is, Michelle can take you through the rest of the document, but the two big discussion points last week were late buses and social workers. Dave wasn't able to be here last week. He's here tonight, so certainly can add anything to that. But the reality is there is money allocated through special education. There's one particular student at an elementary at Pine Grove that is out. There's discussion about him returning. We would use that funding that we've set aside in the out-of-district budget that would potentially pay for the majority of a social worker. So if that were the case and we needed more money, then that money could be this money that we're saying is late buses right now. But the important point is the bottom line is still the same, and all of this is still in a state of flux. So the situation in regards to that student out of districts is in a district is a state of flux. We're not scheduling late buses as of right now, so none of this happens until we get to a bottom line. But that was something where we felt like we could move the dollars. There was very clear dollar numbers and decisions we could make. That's something we could do now. One other point I want to make, and I actually, talking to Bernie after the meeting last week, I'm glad he asked the question. So we keep saying social workers. So in our minds, we're hearing a clinician. We're hearing a licensed clinical social worker. There are many people who hear social worker and think of a case manager sitting at a desk managing a process. That is not. Maybe we should use a mental health professional, a licensed clinician. So that's words that we're using, but I just wanted to make sure we just pause and take time to clarify that we are not talking about a person who is a manager of people per se, but a clinician who would be doing therapy with students in a proactive way so that hopefully we don't end up at those crises points. So just that's, I actually want to thank Bernie for asking that question because it never even crossed my mind that would be misunderstood. So that's an important point to make. I'll pass it back to you, as brief as I could be.
Okay. Thank you. So those are all the changes that are in this budget. They're all detailed here from the current budget to the proposed budget, which does include the restoration of late buses for 2 days a week. But as Brian said, it's still in flux, can certainly change. But if you go on to the next page, page 2, this is the same summary that you saw last week or the week before. All my weeks are starting to blend together now. And all I do is look at budget numbers all day long. But the general operating budget is proposed remains at $42,507,369, which is an increase of $1,721,058. And the capital debt service expenses proposed for FY20 is $1,636,094, which is actually a decrease of $1,051,499, and primarily that is the payoff for the removal of the Salisbury Elementary building, in addition to our other bondings going down slightly each year.
But that was already planned for. They've been planning for that for 20
Forever,
years. So
yes.
that's not just
That is
money
not a
that's
surprise,
appearing.
yes. Not a surprise, not anything that's available. The second box here, general operating budget. These are the revenues that were put together when the state released their initial budget. Anticipating street transportation of $848,871. Interest income of $90,000. Chapter 78 of $8,754,561, and Medicaid reimbursements of $200,000. So that leaves the amount that needs to be assessed to the towns of $32,613,937. And the second yellow box is the assessment shares broken out by the percentages, with Newbury at $9,395,614, Raleigh at $10,557,480, and Salisbury at $12,660,843. The detail on that calculation can be found on page 3, with the percentages found on page 5. But I'm not going to bore you to death with all these numbers all night long. The two green boxes below are the same thing for the debt calculation. It just shows that the Salisbury has decreased, and our Mass School Building Authority revenue offset has also decreased, because that was part of the Salisbury. So the total assessment for the debt for the three towns is Newbury, $126,369, Rowley at $141,951, and Salisbury at $170,266. The next pages are just the calculations, how they rolled up into the page I just covered. On page 6, I just wanted to point out, which is the current and projected class enrollments. Pretty much staying the same. The one big change is at NES in grade 3. We'll be reducing one classroom teacher. Currently we have 3 teachers. We will be decreasing that to 2 classroom teachers due to attrition in the class size. On to page 7 is the school site and DESE function summaries. The top graph in gray, for those that you have it in color, just shows you the dollar changes listed by school, and these do total to the totals of each category later on in the budget, with Newbury Elementary increasing by 3.41%, Pine Grove increasing by 3.07%, Salisbury increasing by 2.61%, the regional middle school by 1.79%, the regional high school by 3.14%, and district-wide programs by 0.14%. The box right below that is by DESE function, or how the Department of Education likes us to categorize all our expenditures. And you will see those changes as well. They still total the total tentative budget of the $44,143,462, and that figure does include the capital and debt. On to the next page is what we call the logical summary. It's more of a logical grouping is what I would call it, something that makes a little more sense to us. So in the top part is the totals. You have the same thing that FY16 through FY20 proposed, with the totals and the changes. And below that, actually detailed instead of a pie chart this year, which was really difficult to read with all the labels because a lot of our segments are so small, detailed it by our spending trends from FY16 to FY20. The large salmon color box near the bottom of each year is the instructional salaries and contracted services. So that shows you how much it really does make up of our entire budget. And the teal colored box near second from the top is our benefits, our health, retirement, and insurance costs. So those are 2 primarily heavy costs within the district. And doesn't look to be too much change there. I mean, the budget has increased year after year by small amounts, but the trend seems to be staying the same. I won't bother walking you through line by line of each of the school locations. If there is anything you have a question on tonight or in the coming days, please let me know. As Brian said, we're looking really for a total figure to be approved tonight, and we can certainly change things, and we have the final budget coming up 1 month from tonight, where the final budget will be voted. So besides the decrease of 1 classroom teacher at NES, there's no significant changes there. So the total increase for NES on page 10 is $142,638, or 3.41%. Yes, this, what Brian just said, these lines all have the COLAs and steps built into them already for all the unions. The only ones that are not allocated amongst the lines is the non-union and a couple of the positions that we're changing, which you'll find at a district-wide.
Can we pause and take a question from Linda real quick?
You were saying that there was 1 class reduction at Newberry. I see one in Salisbury, too, from last year to this year.
Halftime. It's a kindergarten classroom, but it was a half-time kindergarten classroom.
Okay, because the number says 25 to 24, so I just want to...
And it was actually funded by Title I funds, and we don't expect those funds to be recurring this year, so that's why I did not point that out, because it does not affect my bottom line budget. So I apologize.
And we should say, is this still not a lie, Kim? Tell me if I'm wrong. But the numbers are still looking very large for kindergarten at Salisbury. So we always know that the preschool numbers and the kindergarten numbers are a work in progress until we get to the final budget. So we have a month to kind of see where all of the enrollments are landing. But Newbury and Rowley continue to show smaller numbers, and Salisbury looks like as many, if not more, than the current year. So that would mean that that section may have to go back, whether it's halftime, full day K, that is all still to be determined. But Salisbury numbers look larger than the past few years.
I was just going to say, and they have a huge enrollment that comes in, I would say, the beginning of August. In the beginning of August, and they're already at where they were at the beginning of August
currently,
now,
yeah.
right? So we expect a lot more, at least 10.
Dina?
Since we're talking about the grants, I just flipped to page 42, which lists the grants. We
Yes.
currently just have 2. I just think it's worth noting that in prior years, we had more grants available to us than that.
No, actually, the grants begin on page 40.
Oh, on 40, okay.
Yeah, so there's 8 altogether.
But still, there are
But
less
still,
than-
there are
Yes,
less
much less.
grants.
Accurate.
Yes.
Yes,
the
your point is
but I was
absolutely
just looking at
accurate.
the last page.
And just to add to that, Dina, we continue to seek outside resources. So we are applying for grants, but they are going to the larger districts, the urban districts. So I just want to make that point. I don't say when we don't get grants, but just to make that note that we are trying, but they are not going to these types and sizes.
Exactly, that was the point I was going to make as
Yeah.
well. Thank you, Kim.
Yes.
And the big ones, right? So the big Title I, Special Education IDEA, there's another big one? I think in that era. Those used to be significantly larger. They're not quite half of what they were, but they're shrinking rapidly, and those have been, $750,000 for a special education grant, and that's shrinking steadily. So it's not just the grants are disappearing and the big sources are dwindling.
Absolutely. On to page 11 and 12, the Pine Grove School. Same thing, all the allocations for all the steps and COLAs are built in to all the changes, all the requested changes, which most of them were decreases with the principals for their salary and service lines. The total increase for Pine Grove on page 12 is $102,246, or 3.07%. On to Salisbury Elementary School on page 13 and 14. Same thing with them. All their steps and COLAs are built in. Any changes requested by the principal for the supply and service lines. Their total increase is $105,402, or 2.61%. So the percentage increases you're seeing are really strictly salary. There's strictly the cost of living and the steps determined by the union agreements at this point. Middle school is all on page 15. Same thing for them. Their total increase is $53,404, or 1.79%. This is just a little lower than it is in actuality because we had a retirement this current month that was in the budget that is not being replaced or funded next year. So we only budgeted for 3/4 of the salary for that position, but we are not funding that position next year, so we are cutting it. So that shows a less of an increase than would normally be required because that's built in.
Was what that position was?
Mary and Garen.
It was middle school English. Okay. So that we had, we had made the transition. We transitioned someone from the high school to the middle school, and she was providing interventions for the first portion of this year until she retired. And she retired this week.
Yeah, so that position's not being funded for next year, so that's why the increase is less than the other schools. Onto the high school on page 16 and 17, similar situation. Total increase is $235,290, or 3.14%. And then we get into the district-wide programs beginning on page 18.
Michelle, can I just stop you for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Just looking at this quickly, since we just got this tonight. For library services, just looking at the 3 elementary schools, Salisbury is not having a library specialist at all. Is that correct? I see.
That is actually, I believe, funded with choice funds,
Okay.
school choice funds. Yes, they do
Okay.
have one.
Thank you.
There's another funding source. I believe it's choice, though. Yes. No, good question, though. Onto the district-wide programs, beginning on page 18 and 19, and ending on page 21. The one thing I did want to point out is where all the schools have their COLA and steps built in. Most of the people in district-wide are non-union. There are some positions that are split across the district and they fall under district-wide budget, but for the most part, most of us are not within a union. So the non-union proposed COLA and the $8,000 adjustment for the athletic support and the $20,000 that we're adding to reduce the reliance on the special education grant, which keeps decreasing each year. Totals $92,584, which is right near the bottom of the page on page 20. So that is not allocated into the proper lines because the proposed non-union COLA has not been decided upon. And the other 2 decisions haven't been made either. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was that beginning last year, we moved all the substitute costs into the district-wide. It was kind of a nightmare trying to allocate them and guess where more subs were going to be used. So we put it into a district-wide line. At this point, it's easier to manage, and then for reporting purposes, I break it out based on where the vacancies were during the year. But the total increase for district-wide is extremely small at $30,578, or 0.14%. It should be noted also that the $50,000 one-time funding for security was included in last year's budget, so that was also taken out for this year. Most of the remainder of the book, starting on page 22, is just a listing of our current staffs with FTEs. We implemented this last year based on a request, and we thought it was helpful information for everyone within the district as well as the public. So this goes on for a number of pages. But on page 34, our current FTE count as of like 2 weeks ago, which is probably the same as today, is 410.9 FTEs. Last year at this time, it was 427.8. So those reductions were real. They're still there today. A few of the instructional aid positions had to be put back into the budget due to IEP requirements for move-ins and whatnot, but for the most part, all of the positions, have been cut and are staying that way. On to page 35, this is just our current health insurance rates. We actually have a meeting tomorrow, I believe, trying to find out what our proposed increase will be for this year, or our proposed rates from Maya. And that does not take into consideration any plan changes that we are currently in negotiations about. So that's more for information at this point, but not necessarily for next year's budget. Page 36 is the circuit breaker claim. Much talked about issue, kind of difficult. For those of you who aren't familiar with circuit breaker, basically a student's cost has to exceed 4 times their per pupil student allowance. Currently that totals $45,792, and then we are reimbursed at a percentage of the amount that is over that $45,000 figure. So if you look at the chart on the bottom, we are proposing out-of-district special education costs of $2,926,113. We're projecting our circuit breaker revenue at 72% of the reimbursement for $705,812. We will also get what we call a SPED increment, which is similar to circuit breaker, on the school choice funds of approximately $122,000. And then we do receive a small reimbursement from one of our out-of-place students of $50,000 from the family. So our total amount within the operating budget for out-of-district tuitions is $2,048,301. Page 37 just details our current revolving accounts. A lot of these are pretty much self-contained, but some of them do bring in a little more revenue than they actually require, such as Kids Club. We're able to do a little more with that programming because we're bringing in substantial revenues. We're now covering our cost plus a little more. Full day kindergarten and preschool, we're also bringing in decent revenue. School choice receiving fund is also considered a revolving fund, even though the assessment is within our budget. But you will see that the revolving funds probably do not have the volume that used to go through them years ago. They've been pretty consistent since I've been here for the past 3 years. And then similarly, starting on page 40, lists all our grants. And as I pointed out, we're currently down to 8 grants. I know last year, I believe we took about 3 or 4 away, and this year it was another reduction. So every year there seems to be a reduction, and we do not seem to be adding any. Primarily on the grants, we're using these for salaries, so they're strictly salary offsets. While grants are intended to supplement our programming and whatnot, really we're using them for necessary costs. For example, if our special education 240 IDEA grant went away, it's paying for IAs that are required by IEPs. So it's not like we could get rid of that cost. We absolutely need that cost, but the grant is helping us fund that at this time. And then onto the page 43, which is really the DOE codes, which you probably can't read, and really would put you to sleep if this hasn't already. So if there are any other questions? Yeah.
Can I just go back to circuit breaker for just a second? So that was page 36. So just to make sure, to reiterate the point about the fact that funding for special education costs needs to change, not just fully fund circuit breaker. So if I'm doing the math correctly, this is at 72%? Yes. So we're going to receive $705,000 of $2.9 million. If that goes to 75%, we get about $735,000, so we get another $20,000. So if circuit breaker is fully funded in the budget, we get $735,000 of $2.9 million. So when people say, oh, circuit breaker's funded at 75%, people hear we're getting $750,000 back of every $1 million. It's not the case. So that first calculation at the top where it's 4 times the foundation, which is the 45,792, that factor needs to be changed. It needs to include special education transportation. That's one concept. It needs to be maybe 3 times foundation or 2 times foundation, because the foundation still assumes completely unrealistic costs for special education.
Thank you.
That was quick. That was good. So, and I'll note, since I have been knee-deep in circuit breaker for the last week working on the video, that there is funding in the foundation budget. So it's they assume, I believe it's every 14.9 ninth student is a special education student, which we know is not the case, and it is drastically underfunded, as Brian said. And then IDEA also kicks in some funding, but also significantly less. The number I had just read was 37%, so I'm surprised to hear you say that it's over half, because, yeah, didn't you just say it was over half, slightly over half of what they, no, maybe not, of what they used to fund? I don't know. The number I had just read was 37%. Yeah. Maybe it's where it was measured against. Okay. All right. Anyway. It's not there. All right. So one quick comment as you were talking, Michelle, I just wanted to say this. Because we're a regional district, we do house some of our special programs in individuals, particularly at the elementary school level. I know one of the things that popped out at me was, well, Salisbury's population is essentially not going down, but they are seeing, I believe, either the smallest increase or the second smallest increase of an elementary school, and that's because there are programs that are assisting and aiding Salisbury students and all of our elementary school students in other elementary schools. So the funding or the increase that's happening at a particular school is not necessarily indicative of that particular town's resident students. All right, and with that, I will open it up. I will say again, our job tonight is to come up with the top level number. So I anticipate that we will hear discussion about specific line items, but the job tonight is the top level number. It's a high watermark number traditionally with the tentative budget, which would mean that it will not go up from here, although that's not codified anywhere, as Brian pointed out last time, but that's been our tradition, and that's what I'd expect us to stick with, is that the number will not go up. However, it could come down, it can change where that funding is allocated, and I would expect to see change with, obviously we have PEC negotiations going on locally. We'll have more information about our student body with things like kindergarten going on locally. We'll be able to see, have a better indication of what's going to happen at the state level with revenues as time goes on. There's a lot of play out there right now. So those types of things are going to change. Things are going to change within this budget. The goal for tonight is to just come up with and vote that top level number. So I'll open it for discussion. Anyone? Dina?
Thank you, Narissa. After last week's meeting, I still support putting in 2 social workers. I understand that that's not a reality yet. I am hopeful that given some of the changes that are happening, it might happen. I'm thankful that we are even considering putting in the 2 days of late buses. However, I went through the budget again, and believe it or not, I'm going to propose a couple of cuts that I would like the school committee to consider. It applies directly to school committee. The first one being, in the past we have sent, in the past couple of years anyway, we have sent 5 members to the conference, which is a very valuable professional development for us as school committee members. I think we all benefit from it, not just from the courses that we take, but the interaction that we have with other school committee members. I am proposing that we only send 3 people. I'm not quite sure what that cost savings is, but there is some savings. And I understand this is peanuts compared to our total budget, but every penny counts. The other thing is that I identified is we are currently under school committee, paying $6,600 to have our minutes done, and no offense to Sandy. So it's not the person, it's the position. If we went back years ago when I first got on committee, that was the responsibility of the executive secretary, and then as school committee members in subcommittees, we were responsible for our own minutes. I'm proposing we look to doing that again. Again, it's not a great cost savings, but it's something. The only other thing, and I know I had spoken with Michelle about this before, I don't know where we are with trying to figure out if we can do this, but that $1,000 we're paying for the payphone outside of this building, it's $1,000.
That will be looked into before the final budget's voted, I promise you.
So that there again, there's cost savings.
Any comments? Discussion? I'll just say for the MASC conference, I had actually, this was something that Brian and I had extensive conversations on last year, was potentially limiting that. I believe it does come out to about $1,000 a person, I think was what we had roughly figured out. Yeah, something around that line. So I had looked at that in depth. The thing that I came down to, though, was that I believe we are effectively saving ourselves money. Some of it can be quantified. So, for instance, being able to, we had talked extensively in the past about having an evening speaker, and those typically cost anywhere between $750 and a couple $1,000. And we were able to find one that we can bring in for free on a topic that we were looking at already, to be able to provide some information to our entire community, students, parents, community members, and Maureen's going to talk about that one later in the meeting, but we intend it to be big and to hopefully benefit a lot of our students and provide some additional understanding within the district. But that type of savings we've been able to bring back. Dina's knowledge of the Know Before program for the IT security, for making sure we don't get phished, and intelligence, like being able to be aware of the vaping regulations and bring that to the DCC and ask for our town's help in closing that loophole, which is a significant health detriment to students in our district that hopefully, while I know it's not going to stop them, hopefully it makes it difficult to the point that fewer students will be starting, and that there's enough of an awareness building that hopefully we won't have to invest in something like vaping detectors at some point down the road. So I don't know. I'll leave it there, but that was my thought process as we went through that last fall, at the point where I believe the only thing we ended up cutting from the school committee line was the Mars membership, because that was the one thing that I could really say, I can't quantify a benefit from this right now. Maureen?
So I've been to the conference 3 times, and there's tremendous value in so much of what we've taken part of there. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I view the conference as our opportunity for professional development. It's our only opportunity to, get together with other school committees and learn about what other districts are doing. I know we're not a business, we're not a corporation, we're not a school, but everybody invests in development of their employees, and if you take that away, I don't know. I think it would not be. I think if whoever wants to go should be able to go. Maybe we could put a cap, no more than 5, but it's such a small amount of money that we're talking about saving, and I think that we get such a huge value from that conference, and it's our opportunity to, have some professional development.
Paul?
I would agree with what Dina said, only because conferences I've been to, sometimes people double up, go to the same conference. Mm-hmm. I think 3 people can adequately cover the most significant topics that are raised there, number 1. Number 2, there are other ways to further ourselves in professional development. MASC has daily programs throughout the state, various times of the year. Dina's nodding her head. I mean, it's just the reality is that if we were to go to those sorts of things individually, we'd still be able to keep up on some level.
Most of those are charged, if I remember correctly, right? I know the ones I've been are still a charge, right?
Not for divisions.
Okay.
But the divisions have not been overly active yet this year, but not all of them do, but some of them, you're right, they are, if they're independent, right.
Yep. Yep. So I don't know where you want to go from there. I mean, we can definitely look at taking those line items. I don't think we have one for minutes to even look at the options available to that, do we?
So it's roughly
For that?
minutes is like 6,000, 6,600. I would for everything. I would guess that roughly to quantify that, roughly 1,800 to 2,000 would be these routine meetings, and the balance, the $4,600, would be savings to cut for all the subcommittee minutes. That's the bulk of the minutes multiple times per month, whereas we meet once a month.
Where's the DCC included in that? Because that was another, we are currently providing Sandy for minutes. Sorry, I don't mean to make Sandy a commodity here, but we're providing Sandy.
That's a new thing, so that isn't even included.
Okay. All right. So I don't know. I mean, if you want to make a motion to take it down by.
So there's discussion about, so it could be reduced.
Yeah.
So just to tweak slightly what you said. So you're voting a bottom line, top line,
right,
and the assessments to the towns. Mm-hmm. So I was just asking Michelle, can she quickly recalculate the assessments to each town if we drop it by $7,296? Or treat this as the high water mark and use those discussions, if there's 5,000 here, 4,000 here, 2,000 here, as we continue to tweak it with the priorities that we've identified of social workers, and late buses. So certainly that would be my preference, to say keep the numbers the same, know that that's a priority in between tonight's discussion, hearing after the break, discussion on the 6th, and a final vote on the 13th, that could be teased out then before we land at a final number for the 13th.
So that was going to be my other suggestion, is that we kind of stay with where we're at and ask Dina to submit just a list of what we're looking for, so that we have all those numbers. It's not a how much of this is here and how much of this is there, but it's an actual dollar value for those discussions as we go forward. Would that be acceptable? Okay. So if you can get an email to Brian, Michelle, both. Michelle.
You sent it to both of us.
Well, Michelle would be able to pull it out easier than I could, because this was just from the 66 was.
Yeah, I think just clarify
was
the
not
specifics.
even in here.
Like, are we proposing no minutes?
I would propose that we do both ways, because I know there is some hesitation in not having somebody do these minutes.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But and in full disclosure, I do the minutes for my subcommittee anyway, so it wouldn't be any burden on me, but we are looking at 2 other subcommittees that would have to appoint somebody to do the minutes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
So the
Jim?
intention is to leave the budget numbers where they are, with the understanding that only 3 members would be going to the Cape, rather than what's gone on in the past. Is that?
I don't think any decision is being made thus far. I think the recommendation was to vote the number as it is and have the actual dollar values for those discussions down the road, because we're still, I mean, we've got the public hearing, which we won't be having an actual discussion at, but then there'll be a DCC meeting, the budget discussion on March 6th, and then any discussion before the final budget vote on March 13th. So we've got some time to go in which we can have more in-depth discussions down to the line item level, which is not where we need to be at tonight. We really need to have that high level total budget number. All right. And I'm hoping that this was not a Patty oversight. Do we actually have the motion? Okay.
That's completely.
So are you okay if one of us says it and then you say what he said as a motion?
So moved.
It was so moved? So I'll take a stab at it even before you've got it typed in. So to approve a total, definitely, total operating budget for fiscal 2020 in an amount of $42,507,369, with operating assessments to the town of Newbury of $9,395,614, to Rowley at $10,557,480, and Salisbury at $12,660,843. What he said. I feel moved.
All right, I got a motion from Deb,
I'll second.
a second from Maureen. Are we good, Michelle?
Yes.
Did that cover it?
Well, we also have to do the capital.
Yeah, I'll do the capital.
Well, you have to do that separately, right?
Yeah.
2 different votes, right? That's what I thought. All right, any further discussion? All in favor? All right.
So to approve a fiscal 2020 tentative capital debt budget of $1,636,094, with assessments to the town of
Newbury.
Newbury at $126,369, to the town of Rowley of $141,951, and to Salisbury $170,266.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
So to confirm, we will get that, again, just so that you're all aware of the process. We certify that to the towns, so Michelle will work with Patty and Amy, our treasurer, to sign, and then we'll get those out by the end of the week. I think technically we have, the agreement says by the 28th, but
And we'll draft
we'll
them
get
tomorrow
those
and
out.
have Amy
Yeah.
sign
Okay. Thank you very much. I know it's a long and involved process that Michelle goes through on the line item level to get us just to a top level number, basically, knowing that everything is going to change, which must be tremendously frustrating because it's nothing like, working on a pile of sand, I guess, as it's slithering out from underneath you. Yeah.
If I can just reiterate my thanks too, and because I intimately understand it, the reality of it looks like nothing much changed between last week and this week, but the hours and hours and hours to put these numbers into this format. Sincere thanks to Michelle for making it very
I don't
legible.
want to start manipulating it too much
Yeah.
until you really know where we are
Yeah.
last week.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Moving back then, we're going to go back to item 8A, the District Communications Committee. The draft notes were included in the packet, so hopefully you've all had a chance to go through that. Is there any discussion on that? We're meeting again on the 28th, which I expect to be a more formative discussion. During our last full school committee meeting, we heard from Raleigh Finance Chairman Larry White and from Salisbury Town Manager Neil Harrington. So that was kind of an initial reaction, but I would expect to have much further conversation. One of the reasons that it was postponed from tomorrow night to the 28th is to give those individual boards who are involved in that meeting additional discussion time, because the question was raised about whether there was sufficient time to be able to have those discussions prior to tomorrow night. And at the DCC, I think it was generally felt that not only was the night bad because of the holiday, but that the time was insufficient, and that if we could provide more time for those individual boards to have discussions, it would be a better meeting on the 28th. Any comments? All right. B, MASC Regional Schools Committee report.
No, just as stated, we have a meeting next week.
2018-2019 District Strategy for Improvement Mid-Year Progress.
Very good. So I'm actually going to ask Kim to tag team with me, and certainly there are some items that if Dave also wants to chime in at all. I'm going to attempt to not just read through this because this, yes, this much appreciated. So given that we're already at 8 o'clock, I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version. You all doubt me. I'm looking in your eyes. You're like, he can't do it. So feel free to just kick me out, Kim. So I will be very brief. So we've had a lot of discussion about the Bright program. We are on track with that. This budget funds that program. Again, to confirm, it will be the Bridge. I think, isn't that what we're calling it? It's the Bridge program. But that, again, is the program that will address students who are school avoidant and helping get them back in. We are on track there. As far as the implementation of the middle school, high school schedule, we made great strides this year. There were improvements. It's not where we want it to be. If Elmer Cray were here tonight, he would say that to you. We're providing interventions for more students than we did previously, not as many as we'd like. So certainly there's detail there in regards to what the schedule has provided. But we continue to have the discussions, Kim and I, along with Al and Heidi, the middle school assistant principal, are meeting again in early March to take a look at where the schedule is as they continue to refine it so we can maximize the impact for students there at the middle school. The special education program, it's not a program review per DESE, but our internal program review with Alan Bloom, we are on track to have that report by the end of this month to begin reviewing it in early March. There have been some trainings that we've had over the course of this year, and those will continue this year, and we have plans in place to continue those for next year. Those were low-hanging fruit, if you will, very specific technical trainings about the structure of developing an IEP to make sure that we are effective in our instruction and our planning, but also very efficient. So again, please, Dave, anyone else jump in. So 1D, Kim, is there anything you want to say specific about 1D?
I just feel like we have really expanded the use of our data as well as expanded the use of the data to help identify interventions and specific support for students. So I would say the biggest growth that I've seen this year is at the middle school. Elementaries have it down packed. It's part of their structure and their culture, and it is definitely getting stronger at the middle school and moving towards the high school.
Thank you. And then the implementation of the homework guidelines, we sent out a survey after first quarter to the high school. Very low response. I'm sorry, high school and middle school. Very low response from parents. Very quick survey in regards to do they know where to access homework for their students and their thoughts on the guidelines. Do they see those guidelines being implemented with their children? So very low turnout after quarter one for the middle school, high school. We just resent it out because now we're done with quarter two at the high school and the first trimester for elementaries. So that just went out again, a survey from each principal to dipstick again to see where parents believe we are in regards to the practice what their children are experiencing compared to what the guidelines say they should be experiencing. So that will be feedback that we will bring to you. We can do that next month. We'll figure out exactly where to plug it in.
Dina?
In regards to the homework guidelines, I'm glad that we're surveying parents, but as I recall, after sitting through a lot of those meetings, there was some disagreement among teachers as to if these guidelines were, number one, necessary or in alignment with what their topic was or their level specifically at the high school. Have teachers been contacted? Do we have any feedback from them as far as how this homework guideline is going so far?
So to date, no. Will we? Yes. So the first step is, this is what we've said is, we went through that process. Obviously, you were at a lot of the meetings to review that process. Several teachers involved, parents involved, students involved. By the end of that process, we said that then became a policy. It's not policy, but a procedure that I put into place. This is an expectation. This is the way we manage homework in the district. So now it isn't a matter of getting more feedback from teachers. It's a matter of hearing from parents. Are the procedures that we put in place being followed? If they're not, then there's a follow-up from that point. Yeah.
That's kind of what I was getting about
Yep,
in a
absolutely.
roundabout way too.
Right, so we'll start with big
Sure.
picture. If there's
Okay.
a big, huge picture, then Houston, we have a problem. If there's a small picture, we dig in to find out specifics.
Can I just say too, as a recipient of the elementary school one, I know it was designed to be short, but the one thing that I was disappointed in is that it does shift for a lot of students the amount of homework that they could potentially be receiving. And the questions were basically, are the guidelines being followed by the teacher? Does the student feel comfortable with going to the teacher with questions, comments, whatever? And does the parent feel comfortable? I didn't see anything about whether the resulting homework, if it had changed, was manageable in the student's life. And I think that's pretty important because, I mean, at least at the elementary school level, I don't know if those numbers changed, but they could have changed pretty significantly in both directions.
Yeah, I guess I would say, so the first step is, are we following the process that we agreed? Because throughout the development of the guidelines, we surveyed parents, students, and staff throughout.
Right.
Here are the guidelines, thoughts, here are the tweaks, here are the thoughts. So before we start, I don't want to say unpacking, but retesting the guidelines themselves, we have to make sure that they're being followed.
Yep. No, that's
So
fair.
then from that, if they're being followed, and we dipstick then about questions about is it problematic, then at least we know it's being followed and is problematic. It's not just being ignored and problematic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
So
it
I would
does.
say, I don't want to speak for Kim, but we've had this discussions about this, and after the time, I'll say we, but that Kim dedicated to this, there's a complete focus on our part to make sure that we are making sure that the guidelines are being adhered to, and then continuing this. This isn't we'll do a couple surveys and then we're good. This will be a routine check-in.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know that those things are mutually exclusive, and I would worry that in the meantime we're potentially overloading or underloading students and not getting the feedback on that. Although I would certainly hope that students or parents would step forward if it was one
Right,
way
there's
or the
that
other.
there's a comment.
Yep.
So I would hope so, but yeah, no, I get that point. I think the spirit was.
It's just feedback.
Yeah, no, it's good feedback. I think I always look when we're doing surveys to make it as simple as possible, because just as a general rule, people don't respond. So I'd rather do multiple 2-3 question surveys. So I think that eventually is a discussion, absolutely, yeah. Kim, do you want to speak to 2A, and then I guess really all of them?
We have an implementation plan in place. We have provided the teachers with PD regarding the new standards. We have had opportunities for them to look at some of the new resources available. And we also have an implementation as far as which grade levels will be moving to the new standards, and then it will go up into the high school. So we are absolutely on target for that, and feel as though we're in a good place as we move forward in the process. And the process has been outlined, and there's a plan with timelines attached.
So do you want to?
I was going to say, do you want me to keep going?
I was just going to say, this
Keep
2 is
going.
you.
So this year, midpoint, we did a check-in with the schools and the principals to find out where they were within the pacing guide, because it's really important as you roll out a new program to make sure that we are not necessarily in the same place on the same day at the same time, but the expectation that science is being taught and that our students are having familiar experiences across the district. So our most recent dipstick into where folks are showed some discrepancies within how many units or scopes had been taught. So we are meeting with the principals tomorrow to find out what type of obstacles have been in the way or are they encountering. Some of the schools have stated that some of the scopes, which are attached to STEM scopes, are taking a little bit longer than previous scopes. So it could be the group of students that they have. This is their second year with STEM scopes. We're hoping that it's not because of the program, but we will continue to have those discussions. We are also doing a walkthrough on Friday with the principals to observe a classroom at 6th grade where the teacher is very skilled at implementing the science practices. So in addition to strengthening the understanding of the teachers who are using the science programs, we would like to strengthen the principals who are the instructional leaders at the school so that as they're going through and doing their walkthroughs, they have some knowledge as to what they should be seeing as far as students' engagement. So we are keeping a close eye on that. There's definitely been, I can tell you, a huge increase in the amount of time in the upper grades that people are dedicating to science, especially in the middle schools, especially in the elementary schools where they have taken and adjusted like for 5th and 6th grade, and they have one teacher who is teaching science and they're rotating through. So that was a change to address some of the shortcomings as far as the amount of instructional time with science, and that's been a real positive. So now it's just about looking at some of the younger grades, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, to see what's happening as far as the science and what is being taught and how often. Any questions on that? The substance abuse prevention program is the life skills. Again, implementation 4 through 8. We have also had the addition of the sex ed in the middle school. Again, I've heard some positive comments both from students, teachers, and parents regarding the new curriculum up at the middle school. They are continuing to expand and develop that, especially in the area of vaping, which every year that particular unit gets larger and larger. I was in a class the other day and she had them do a lesson where they had to just identify what they already knew about vaping. And it just so happened that I had seen that same lesson the year before, and the amount of knowledge that the kids started with as far as their baseline was double what they had the year before. So that made me feel good that we are working collectively as a district, teachers, students, staff, student body, to really get the word out about vaping and not the benefits, but the hazards of it. So that's moving in the right direction. Math and Focus, we're almost in our, 6th year of that? No, not 6th year, 4th year of Math and Focus, seems like 6 years. And we are continuing to provide professional development to our teachers, going deeper into, again, the math practices, which are connected to the science practices. We did see an increase in our MCAS scores this year. We have also had people focusing more on the problem-solving aspects, so that has really provided some great discussions with the teachers. So we're on target with that.
Can I just ask
Yes.
a quick question? Reflex math, I understand it's expensive and that the students have been working off a 30-day evaluation. Okay, is that something that's actually,
Yes.
so it's a long term? Okay.
So reflex math
The budget.
is something that I was able to support through the PD and some of the title money that comes through the state. So Pine Grove was the one school that had a free subscription, but it was actually expiring at the end of this month. So during one of their data meetings, they were talking about the success that the kids have had with it. So we were able to, in fact, Michelle was part of that discussion, we were able to switch some funds around from PD funds that I had just a small amount left over, pulled it together, and we were able to get not just till this year, but we asked them to, if we could, and they were great. So we have that all through next year. But you will see that on next year's budget for PGS. so yes. Plan for implementation of comprehensive wellness curriculum. I spoke to that about the life skills and just continuing to expand life skills to include more of the state standards in there. The PBIS, again, I would say at the elementary school, it has become part of their school culture. At the middle school, they have had some delays in just having the conversations around PBIS. There are varying points of view on discipline. So we are actually having somebody come in March who is going to be presenting on, my mind is going blank right now, Brian, restorative justice. So which is different than PBS. So again, it's bringing in all different views of discipline and what is the best way to address discipline. So still working through some of the initial implementation of PBIS, but continuing conversations at the middle and high school. The Essex Community Asset Builder, this is really an area of glow, I would say, this year. We have hired Julie Romano to come in and work with the community, as well as building the assets with the students, and she has done that and exceeded that even mid-year to what we had hoped to see happen. So I'm sure all of you have heard some of the great programs that she is doing. She is working with the senior citizens. She's working and connecting young kids, and just doing a marvelous job with that. So that's definitely on track. The Community Service Requirement Program, we've had some preliminary discussions. They have a little bit hit the pause button right now as we begin to look at how NEASC, they have a self-reflection report, and how that can get kind of wrapped in with that community service program. So that will all come together, I would say, in the fall of next year as we have more guidance on that. We talked about the wellness teacher. The Safe and Drug-Free Schools grant, which is the substance abuse grant that we didn't get, but I applied again, and we did get some funding through that, and we're using that to educate our 504 coordinators who are responsible to create plans for our students who have mental illness or have other types of concerns that are impacting their ability to learn. So we really wanted to strengthen those specialists' understanding and how to best interact with those students. So we have training for them from Dr. Angela Musso, who is coming in at, I think she's on her 4th workshop with them, and at the end they're going to have a strong plan in place so that we know how to best support students within that tier 2 of implementation.
I'll pick up. I'll take.
Do you want to take it from here? Because I think it goes on to your area.
So Aspen and Google Classroom, there was a discussion about previously about moving to a different student information system platform. We put that on the burner because that's a funding issue. But this year we did streamline so that as a basis, every teacher is using either Google or Aspen. There were a lot of other disparate systems that were being used, and some of those are being used in addition. But for grading, Aspen is the tool for grading, and then some teachers use that as well for classroom management, but Google Classroom is becoming more and more the norm. Increasing communication within the district to build community. We communicate, I communicate. I can do more. So that's still a work in progress. Advocating, I don't think we need to say a lot about that. We've spent a lot of time talking about how we have advocated and the work that we do need to do. That continues, and I'm hopeful. Even hearing last week, hearing Neil talk about what he can do, take his part. As I had said, Neil and Roger Hatch and I are meeting next week to provide some further understanding. So we need to work with our towns. So that is a we, and it is the district and the towns working together to advocate on behalf of the district. A district marketing strategy, we don't have a formal marketing plan, but the district annual report was certainly a start. That was a very different approach, and we continue to try new and different ways for marketing, but I still do believe a formal marketing plan is something that we need to move towards. And as far as expanding the use of social media, we have expanded a little more. It's a little more consistent, trying to get a more uniform approach. Even today, talking with Ketty about even streamlining our information. Parents get a lot of emails from us, trying to get to a point where information and documents get posted on social media throughout the week, but then emails don't get sent out, and every Friday we're going to try to do a digest email. So they might have seen the flyer on Facebook or this tweeted, but then every Friday there's just going to be the kind of the Reader's Digest version of the 18 events, from signups to youth sports to community events. So we're hopeful that will streamline things for folks. And I'm trying to be creative on social media and be the video guy. And I just want to thank everyone who continually posts on my Facebook wall, all these amazing singers. You saw the superintendent and principal from somewhere in the Midwest that are like professional singers. That I am not, but working on some creativity. With TLLT, we continue to have those discussions. We are meeting less frequently, but kind of redefining our alignment. We talk about making sure that we are, I'm blanking on the word I'm looking for, that we are calibrated as a team when we're observing teachers. And so we're doing some good work in kind of thinking differently, not just necessarily how we evaluate, but also what do we believe good instruction looks like, and also some of the programming, and trying to build off of some of the positives in each group to spread that across the buildings. 10-year capital plan, again, we've had the discussion, there's nothing formal. We do have our certified E&D now, so the plan at this point is to come to you by April with a proposal to adjust the budget for the use of about, call it roughly $100,000 at this point, just for a placeholder, of which 25 of that would be to fix the control access, all of the visitor access, not the visitor access, the control swipe access for all the buildings. Access control is the word I was looking for, as well as $75,000 to do a complete study of this campus. I think there is some timing, some pertinent timing here in that the renovation of this campus is paid off in 2021. So if there were capital needs that could be identified and we could get in the pipeline with the MSBA to hopefully have a portion of that under their accelerated repair program, then we would have good timing to be able to address the concerns that we've been talking about for some time at this building. So I believe 5C is what you mentioned to me.
That is the one I mentioned.
That's definitely just completely missing. Leadership meeting agenda items. Not sure what happened there. That's just a bad cut and paste. So the budgets and the requests were aligned. Your school committee goals were aligned to conditions for success. So the final budget document, that's still a work in progress of how specifically we align. The thinking behind that was when we make new requests, we align them to specific priorities. When we're not making new requests, it's kind of hard to align them to priorities. So that budget process will continue to be a work in progress in regards to its alignment to the strategy. But all goals are aligned. And then an annual report. Don't need to say anything other than we've had that discussion, looking to next year, still working on a figure of what it would cost to mail the full color copy to every residential and commercial address in the towns. And depending on what that cost is, potentially finding one or two sponsors that would be willing to put their information on the back of that report and cover the cost. So that could be an annual report that shows up in everyone's mailbox across all three towns, commercial and residential. So that's the mid-year update. Any questions? Oh, that was yours. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Comments or questions? Deb.
This is just, it's not a question, but on the back page where you have included the definitions,
Yep.
I think that's great.
Yes.
Just because
It's important.
sometimes we forget that not everybody knows what we're talking about.
I think that was your
Different language.
recommendation a couple, like
What?
last year. I think it was
added
your
that.
recommendation
Yeah,
in the last,
yeah.
yeah.
We added it to
is
the
nice,
strategy
yeah.
this year, and yes, it's important. I like that. Yes.
Any other comments? All right. Moving on to school committee goal follow-up. Obviously, I think we've all been knee-deep in meetings. Deb has one. Oh, go ahead. You want? Whoever wants to go first. Ladies can sort that out.
Just quickly, a couple of weeks ago, I had an opportunity to go to Newbury Elementary School and help out in the art teacher's classroom. They were working on the Valentines for the senior citizens. So it was just really sweet to, see the work that they had done, and their little love notes to our seniors was really cute. And they ended up doing, they were able to send out 260 Valentines At Christmas, they did 400 Christmas cards, and thanks to the PTA who donates the supplies and the families at NES donate the stamps. It's something they've been doing for 13 years, so it was fun to be able to see that. And then as a little bonus, the art teacher had to go down to the ASD room, the little ones. So it was just kind of neat to see that. We've talked so much about the ASD program, so to see what was going on there was just kind of neat. So.
Deb?
I went to the Salisbury Elementary School PTA meeting this past week, and they have some of their meetings in the morning to allow teachers to come and participate, and they have some of their meetings at night, which is more for allowing more of the parents to get there. And they're both successful in their goals, and that's just, they're a wonderful group, and happy to watch them work. The other thing, I happened to be at the Hilton Center in Salisbury when the activities director came out and started talking about Pen Pals, the Pen Pal program with Salisbury Elementary. It was completely coincidental that I was there, but it was a great opportunity for me to give a little pitch to the people that I usually work with there. And the wonderful news is that they have as many pen pals as they need. The list was filled.
Excellent. All right. Barring any further discussion on that point, I'm going to actually take a step back because Dina just pointed out that for the district strategy of improvement, we should have had a motion to receive and file that, the district strategy for improvement. So can I please get a motion to receive and file?
I'll make a motion to receive and file the district strategy for improvement mid-year progress report.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right. Thank you. My apologies for missing that. Normally we have those called out. All right, moving on to item E. This is Maureen, the equity planning, presentation planning for Jeff Peroty's visit in April.
Yes. Well, thanks to Kim Croto, we have been able to secure a date with Jeff. He'll be coming to Triton on April 2nd from 6:30 to 8 p.m., which is a Tuesday. So we've sort of, I connected with him last week by phone, and we just sort of talked through what, we were looking at. He'll come and do a presentation similar to what he's done for the MSc on gender, education, and identity and expression. We'd like to open it up beyond Triton and invite some of our area schools so they can come be a part of this as well. There's a lot of valuable information that he'll speak about that evening. And I did reach out to I started by the high school principals and the middle school principal because he had suggested that if we had some gay student alliance groups at our school, which we did, that they could possibly be involved, which I thought was a great idea. So I did reach out to both principals and unfortunately was told that we don't have those groups this year. The high school does not have one currently because the teacher or the school nurse was running it last year, and when she retired, there was no staff member that replaced her. So that group isn't meeting. And at the middle school, they aren't meeting because they don't have after-school buses. So I'm going to work with the guidance counselor at the middle school and then Catherine at the high school. I've also reached out to the elementary principals as well, just to give them a heads up, and that I'll be sharing more information with them as I get it. Jeff is going to be sending me some things too that I can use for advertising his visit. So when I get to that point, I would like to maybe get some help in maybe getting it out on the...
Absolutely.
Yep, for that.
All right, moving on to item F, the superintendent's evaluation process goal setting update.
So mid-year update for my goals. Again, it's not an update on the whole process, but just goals specifically. So for goal 1, the two actions were the special education review and the review of the history and social studies implementation. I'm not going to rehash because we just went over that with the district strategy update. Both of those items were outlined in there as well, so I can certainly answer any questions that you might have on that, but I don't think we need to repeat information that was shared there, other than we are on track with the special education review. Look to have that in, be able to review that in early March and be able to report to you by the end of the year, as well as implementing those history and social science changes for curriculum for next year, and continue planning beyond. For goal number 2, which is a professional practice goal, the actions were the annual report, expanding the use of social media, the addition of a superintendent coffee. So again, as this is kind of redundant, should have just said, hey, check in with the district strategy. But again, the annual report, as outlined in the district strategy update, was mailed to over 10,000 households and commercial residences. It was a postcard that was mailed with information of where to find that report online. Reports were printed in professionally color printed and put in all libraries, town halls, and what was the third place? Senior centers, thank you, as well as all the schools in our office. And there are copies of those if we need to put more out. And as I talked about next year, the goal is to mail that full report out to everyone covered by donors. Social media, we continue to expand the use. Again, continue to have a discussion about, I have a Facebook account, I have a Twitter account, we have a district Facebook account, a district Twitter account. I think those need to be streamlined, because often I'm reposting something that Ketty might have put out on the Facebook page for the district, or vice versa. So I think we need to do some streamlining there. As well as continue to be creative in our approaches. And in regards to the coffees, those weren't established, but Narissa reminded me that there was a discussion from the Saturday workshop in specifically focusing on the budget. So actually, Michelle and I were comparing notes, and we are proposing a coffee drop-in in each town. I was thinking to start maybe at the town libraries. Seems like neutral territory. I'll pick up a box of Joe on my way over and just advertise it. Certainly Michelle and I can be there, answer questions about the budget, do one in each town. We were looking at the Tuesday the 26th, which is the Tuesday after break, and then the Tuesday and Thursday following, which is the 5th and 7th of March. So there was discussion at the meeting about committee members joining. Obviously you can't all gather, or you have a quorum. So I don't know if we want to somehow clear dates, or just we post the dates and anyone who's available can show up, and hopefully it's more than just Michelle, me, and
Yeah, we'll probably work out a sign-up sheet if that's amenable with the committee, similar to the one that we have for the goal setting, for our goal that has all the dates and whatnot, so that we can kind of keep it to a.
Have you set a time of day, or?
So we were thinking for the first ones, do it in the morning. We have opportunities, specifically, again, in this purpose, focusing on the budget. We have the hearing. I mean, we have obviously tonight's meeting. We have the hearing on the 27th, meetings on the 6th, meeting on the 13th. So there's plenty of opportunities in the evening for folks to come out if they're interested. But an opportunity to try something different, 9:30 in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. If nothing happens there, maybe we try the same thing, but in the afternoon, or try it at night. But as a starting point, unless anyone objects to those dates, we'll book those, work with the town libraries to see if we can find a space, and then figure out the best way. I'm going to guess that social media may not be the best way to advertise that, but we'll do social media plus, as well as working with the towns to figure out how best to advertise that. So, any questions about that? And then the final goal, which was on district improvement, the actions were adjusting the schedule for the school improvement plans, as well as redesigning the budget planning process. So I think that, I won't read it word for word, but we've obviously done things very differently this year. I don't think we've done things perfectly this year, but I think that being responsive to the experience and the process from last year, that was incredibly challenging. I think the process has, to date, been effective. That doesn't mean that it's not challenging for all towns, in particular Salisbury. But I feel like we're somewhat of a working relationship with the towns to try and move forward and figure things out. So, any questions about any of that?
Questions or comments for Brian? Tina?
Going back to the last DCC that we had.
Is your
those-
mic working?
Yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
it is. Okay.
Going back to the last DCC that we had in Newbury, which I thought was probably one of the more constructive DCCs that I've attended. I'm wondering if it would be helpful. I know that was a really long meeting, but if that's something, if they're recorded, that we can post on social media to share with people, just because I know realistically, like in rally talks, like they'll post like the planning board agenda or they'll post agendas and stuff. But the reality is if people don't have a link, they're probably not going to go back and watch the video. And I feel like at that meeting in particular, and hopefully in the upcoming meetings where we're really having more constructive conversations, there's so much unpack that I felt like a lot of light bulbs went off in a lot of people's heads. And I want people to see that. So without duplicating our efforts, because we're all busy and trying so hard, especially Brian, so having to repeat yourself, I think if people could be directed and watch those meetings, that would be helpful for us, especially prior to the public hearings and really moving forward on the budget, so they could see how we are communicating with the towns. Because the reality is even though I think we're doing better and we've improved from what we learned last year, no one really knows that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, so I can say Brian and I have had conversations about kind of communications and how to communicate out from here.
That would be
because there's a whole lot of stuff up in the air. We need to, so back when we did our original letter to the legislators, they had said, well, what about things beyond the Promise Act? And I said, we'll be back in touch. I need to make an effort to write that letter, and we need to figure out what's going to be said, and then we also need to find a way to communicate that to the public as time goes on, so that they can understand the situation that we're in with state funding. There needs to be communication about this budget process, especially coming into the hearing. So I think that can absolutely be rolled in, and that's something that we'll be tackling as, probably over the next week, I would guess, as time is going on.
I just think it would help us to see the discussions between the town officials and us, and help people wrap their heads around what's really going on and what our officials think in front of our faces.
I think you said the audio was not great on the Newbury one.
I haven't actually had a chance to watch it yet. I was there, so I don't tend to go back and watch the meetings I'm at unless I have a question. I had heard that from Jim Sullivan. He had said he had tried to go back and rewatch it because he had only recorded part of it on his portable recorder, and that when he went back to try and ascertain exactly what was said, he had a difficulty with with getting a quote from the audio. Yeah.
Work on
Nice
that.
to have
Yeah,
to share, be
absolutely.
able to share that.
Better way to post that. Absolutely.
Any other comments on Brian's evaluation process? All right, can I get a motion to receive and file the superintendent's 2018-2019 mid-year goals progress update, please?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, get a unanimous vote. Item G, monthly report of the superintendent of schools.
So continuing, Pine Grove update, briefly. Phase 3 is now complete, which means that currently the second and third grade are living in the upstairs, and some other interventionists and supports are living in the upstairs of the south wing. So if you're looking at the building, the left wing, one floor is now rehabbed, the all-purpose room, and the upstairs on the wing that goes to the right, if standing at the front entrance. And they have now moved the renovation to the lower half of the south wing. So they are already well underway with the rehab in the lower wing. The top wing, if anyone has the opportunity, we certainly can do another tour. It's absolutely beautiful. Just the brightness, the clarity, it's the spaces, the technology, the touch screen panels. It's amazing. So we're going to say something?
I was just going to say that I actually ended up talking to Christine Nealon because she was asking me about a potential date for an actual tour. Yeah. And I will have to go back and repull it, but we were talking about making it the same night as the book fair parent night in March.
Great.
So I just have to go back and figure out what that date was, and then I could communicate that. I had totally forgotten about that
And
conversation.
can I just add, I was there today, and I didn't get to tell you, but it was awesome. The kids were in chairs that were mobile, so they were allowed to rock.
They're all rocking chairs.
And they were still focused and paying attention, and then there were the stools where they could swivel if they needed to. And Michelle Loico, the math specialist, had her touch TV up and doing math interventions with it all on the screens, and the kids were touching and moving things around, and it was so exciting. So I'm sure people will take advantage of that tour. And I wish there were kids, actually, that they could see in action using the chairs and all the great technology that they have, because it was incredible.
Given that it's family night, there may be kids there.
Yes,
I imagine there will be.
True.
Yes, that's usually a very busy night at the school. So the thought was if we could pull everything in together, it's a one-stop shopping
Great
kind
idea.
of. Come in and check it all out.
So just as far as pacing, so that lower south wing phase will go through the end of, or late May. Then in May, they're going to transition again. And everyone, if you know that back east wing, the library side, that whole side will be walled off, and they're going to begin renovations there. And those folks, those classrooms will move to their homes in the lower south. And then working certain sections like that big curtain wall in the lobby, or in the Link Art Gallery, trying to cordon things off so that they can start early, because they know unequivocally, without doubt, on September 1st, they will be done with that building. So it will be an impressive building when it is done, that the district and the town of Rowley can and should be incredibly proud of. So. And an incredible benefit to our students. A high school principal search, I am not going to give you a name tonight because I am still negotiating a contract, but we had a process that started with 26 applicants, winnowed that down to 6, down to 4. The original thinking was to bring 3 candidates back and bring them back publicly this week. After the first 2 rounds, with multiple panels, parents, teachers, and administrators, the number 1 that came out of that first round was brought forward with 3 others. After that second round, which was a combined panel of parents, administrators, and teachers, the 2, 3, and 4 shifted, but number 1 remained number 1, and I would say pulled well ahead of the pack. That candidate, he was brought back today and spent from about 11:45 to 4 o'clock here today. I met with him and the student council, about a dozen students from the student council, had lunch with them, had the opportunity, they interviewed him, he interviewed them, sent him on a quick little tour, had the opportunity to chat with the students, and they said, "Oh my gosh, yes." So I'm very hopeful for the future of Triton High School. I think this will be, he'll be a tremendous asset, and I hope to be able to. I'm very confident that by Friday I'll be able to send publicly an email out district-wide announcing him, it is as a male, as the next principal. The hope is that, not that it's fair to introduce a new principal at the budget hearing, but trying to find a time, bring some positivity and levity to it. I'm going to ask the principals to be here for the hearing, and I think it's a great time. It's an opportunity so that he can come and actually meet the faculty in the afternoon. The high school council is meeting that afternoon. He can meet with the school council, go to dinner with the leadership team, the administrative team from the high school, and then an opportunity for me to introduce you to him. Obviously not going to take a lot of time, but even just 5 minutes to introduce, and then he can sit here, and I'm very confident he'll be very present between now and July 1st when he starts. Again, the contract starts July 1. He will finish his time in his current role as a high school assistant principal. But it would be a great opportunity for him to come and hear some of the budget information. So I'm very excited about that process. And I wish I could tell you more information, but I think in fairness, until there's a signed contract, I don't think that's fair to do. As far as the website, we're going to need to redesign our website. I think we've had this discussion very briefly in the past. Our website is not ADA compliant. We have not had any issues. We have not been brought before OCR or anyone, but if it does happen, you have to respond within 90 days. So this is, last time we revamped the website, it was an incredibly involved process because we went from the Stone Ages, I think, Dina, you were part of that process, went from the Stone Ages to what we have now. So we're not going with a considerable, massive change, but it will be a change in the format to a basic content management system. It will be compliant, ADA compliant, hearing impaired, visually impaired, and it will be maintained ADA compliance. So just so that you're aware of that process, we're going to continue probably doing some surveying about basic designs and formats, but I think much more user-friendly. And then more than anything, I don't know if you've noticed, but I can say when I use the website, it's not responsive. It's slow and laggy. So more than anything, it's simple and incredibly quick and responsive. That's what we're looking for. So more information on that to come. Just to make you aware, the mandated breakfast program, there's a requirement based on previous year's information. So now the middle school is going to be required to offer breakfast. They already offer breakfast, so it's not a big deal. But along with that, there's I'm sure you've heard about the After the Bell program. Because they're required, they're going to have to also meet the After the Bell requirements, which I think you know at the high school, there's a cart, 2 carts, that kind of mid-morning is available. It's through the food services program. Kids can buy, or students can buy. It's all reimbursable breakfast products, but we'll have to figure out something along the lines to do the same thing at the middle school as well. Following up on school choice, just to share the letter that I sent to parents. I mentioned that last month. I have had 2 phone conversations, and is that true? 2 phone conversations, and I met with one parent today. I can't say there's anything particularly alarming that I learned. There were some concerns that were raised, and that I don't think there's anything that was raised that hasn't already been identified, items that, issues that we're already working on, or issues that I wouldn't necessarily share publicly. But I will also say that of the 19 that were shown as choiced out, 3 of them are confirmed returned to the school, not from any of this, but we're already in the process of being confirmed back, and I'm pretty sure 2 others moved back out of town in the process of confirming that. So that would pull 5 off of that 19. And then just the remainder of the budget process. So if there's any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Maureen?
I just have a quick question on the personnel report. Just on a position, what is focused assistant worker under Salisbury Elementary?
Focused assistance is through the grant. Kim, is that correct?
Sure, I'm not. That's
I'm almost positive. I thought that was through Title I, or is that through the 21st Century Grant? It's through the. It's basically tutoring, but it's a specific name through the 21st Century Grant. Yeah.
Something I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
Tina?
So the interviewing process for the principals in terms of the parent and administrator panels, is that always how you guys have done the interviewing process? I just think that's neat. I didn't know that you.
Yeah, I would say that's been used. It was the process we used 2.5 years ago. And it was the process we used this time. I believe Christopher used it several times as well, for at least district or senior level administrators. It is a good process. It was interesting when I kind of shared with my NISIP cohort, other superintendents, and the responses ranged from, well, that seems a lot, just meet with people and choose someone, to I just felt like it involves. School council chose the parents, so I wasn't involved in choosing the parents.
That was going to be my next question.
Teachers Association organized the faculty and staff panel, so I didn't have any say. And then administrators, we had 7 administrators. So it was a very good group this time. I will say it was a very, we were aligned as far as our vision and what we were looking for. And someone actually asked me at the end, not in front of the whole group, just said, so had you gone and hired someone, this was after round 2, is this where you'd be? And my response was, 2, 3, and 4 may have been lined up differently than the whole group lined them up, but absolutely number 1 would have been the candidate unequivocally. So, but I think it provides buy-in. It provides for the faculty, for the staff, for the parents that they were engaged in the process. I would love to involve more. There's just no way to manage it.
Right.
And again, ultimately, the hope was to have finalists that would have been either Monday, Tuesday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 2 or 3 finalists. But because of the fact that there was such a disparity between 1, 2, and 3, that's not fair for me to make someone's name public if I don't think there's a good solid chance that that person is going to be, especially when we have candidates that are very successfully sitting in roles maybe not too distant from Triton. So I think this was the, and I'd wanted to involve students earlier, but again, the confidentiality issue, but today absolutely solidified it.
Oh, that's neat. I think that's really cool.
Any other comments or questions for Brian on his report? All right. Excellent. So we already did the tentative budget deliberation and approval. So moving on to the 2019-2020 school year calendar approval.
So I don't know if Kim, if you want to talk about the PD committee. So this is a duplicate of last year's calendar. Obviously moved around for the every year changes, swings a day. But the only thing that's missing right now are the half professional development days. We've been having discussions about the half-day professional development days. Mostly, actually there was an article in the paper, I believe, last week from Newburyport, and they were talking about, it was in relation to student attendance, and they felt like on half days, students just weren't coming to school. So we've had lots of different discussions. Is the half day the right thing? Is the half day, currently they're usually on Fridays, is the half day right, but maybe not on Fridays, maybe we try it on Wednesdays. And then there was also the discussion, several districts have tried a late arrival. So rather than being dismissed early, students just arrive to school roughly 2 hours, 2.5 hours late. So from those that I've spoken with, it works really well. There's just a different level of engagement, especially if you don't do that on a Friday. So if a lot of districts do PD days on Wednesdays. So if we did a late arrival, whatever, once a month on a Wednesday, that's obviously a significant impact for parents. The question is it a better impact to go to work 2.5 hours late, or is it a better impact to have to leave work early? Those who are dealing with childcare, is it easier to get childcare to get a student on the bus and then have a normal end of the day, or vice versa? So the PD committee went around and around, and we landed on, we would love to see, but we also not sure of the impact. So Kim and I had the discussion and thought, if you approve the calendar as is now, this gives you, knowing that we have to add the 8 half days in whatever fashion we're going to add them. But this at least gives us the ability to, when parents, of course, are already asking, what's the school year calendar for next year, we can talk about the start date, the end date, and the vacation dates. So we can solidify that tonight. There was also some discussion in August, those 4 green days. Those are PD days. So the first day of that week, that Monday, the 26th, is when all new staff arrive back. Tuesday is convocation. So when all new staff report for orientation. Tuesday, every staff, all 425, show up and we meet here and then disperse to the schools. And then the 28th and 29th are full-day professional development. There was some discussion about moving those into the school year. I think they could be as impactful, if not more impactful, during the year, but that also pushes the end of school out one additional day. That impacts parents, obviously. So we've had a lot of discussion about balancing the impact on families with the impact on student attendance, to the impact on staff attendance if it's a half a day on Fridays, man, that makes for a great long weekend. So it's balancing all of those things. So our hope was to propose this tonight and prove it as a first reading or a first run through as far as the basic shell, and then maybe if there's interest in that concept of moving half days to Wednesday, or, a simple survey. Do you like the idea of a half day? Which day a week is best? What are your thoughts on late arrival? And just give a little brief concept and get feedback from parents. Or if that's something that you right off the bat want to say, don't even want to talk about that.
And we would have kids club at the elementary level. So if we decided before school care. So right now we offer after school care when we have the early release days. We would just flip it and offer it in the morning for families with young children.
Would serve lunch. So students would be here by the time they go to lunch. They might be arriving and going right to lunch, but lunches would be served.
And the feedback that we've heard from other districts who have made this switch, and you talked, I think, to some of your colleagues as well.
I think Tri-Town and Mass.
Tri-Town, yeah, it was very positive. So again, just looking at different options that would best support our students and staff. So we're not quite sure.
Any discussion on that? Feedback? Maureen?
I just have a quick question, because about June, there's no graduation date. Is that to come, or should there be a graduation date in there?
We usually add that after because there's other impacts, but it would be that it would be June 6th, unless anything changes, unless anything moves. But it would be June 6th.
Any other discussion? So I would definitely, if we can make PD more impactful without negatively impacting families, I would be all for that. I know change is sometimes difficult and it would be hard to get used to, but
it can be fun too. Change can be great. Just had to.
Yes. So I would say as long as it's well thought out, I would be behind at least looking at making a potential change to the way professional development is done.
So we'll do some surveying.
Yeah.
And come back to you in March with hopefully results of a survey, and then depending on what the survey says, a very clear, here you go, just keep it the same, or let's have some discussion. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim, and then Dina.
What happens when you send the survey out? 90% of the parents say they don't want in-service.
That won't be a question.
It won't be.
The question will be keep it.
Thank
you for clarifying, Jim. So there will be limited questions on this survey. We have the 8 half days.
Right.
As another option, is there a belief that move it to Wednesdays? Yes.
Very careful with that language.
Yes.
Yeah, no. We know PD has to happen. Dina?
That leads to my question. You're going to ask about Wednesdays and also whether you go to a late arrival, correct?
Those are the questions, basically. Like it on a Friday, maybe on a Wednesday, and then on either of those 2 days, would you consider a late arrival rather than a half day, an early release?
Are you also going to question, you had mentioned about moving one of those days in August? You're going to leave that full day where it is?
I think that's more of a discussion and a decision we need to make what works for PD. If we move that and don't have students start before Labor Day, then we're extending the year. And we definitely don't want, we definitively didn't want to move both days. So if it was one day, we certainly don't want to bring students back for just the Thursday to start the year and then Tuesday after Labor Day. So I think those are definitively, that's the best as far as impact on PD. And I mean, we can also ask parents, but I don't even know that we need to ask. There are very, very, very few parents that, at least who I've spoken to, that want to come back before Labor Day. By and large, everyone is saying, please give us that last week of August. Long time ago, yeah. Yeah. In the last decade, yeah. 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 It did not go well. It was not. At least those who spoke with us, that was not a positive thing. No. And a lot of districts do that and have shifted to after Labor Day.
What about consolidating to more full days versus 8 half days? Because I know I don't have kids in the district anymore,
that was
but
my idea, Dina.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
I hear parents say that all the time, that
so that doesn't work because of the math. So students have to attend 180 days. Teachers work 183. A half day is one of the 180 days.
Right.
teachers work the full day, that's how we get the half day of PD. To combine 2 half days, you can't, because it's still, it's a full day for teachers. So we were talking about turning a full day into a half day and moving it, and it's,
Just, I do like the idea of Wednesday morning professional development as impactful professional development.
And we were talking about the lack of sleep for students too. It would, I mean, it would give them some extra sleep, some much deserved.
it would be an interesting, there's so much discussion about, high school students coming in later, and there are districts who are dabbling, and I don't know how they're figuring out without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for transportation, but I don't think anyone disagrees that it would be great, but this would be a great opportunity to even test out. Or is there some way we could somehow quantify, do kids seem more engaged and ready on a Wednesday afternoon where they slept in till, it's not like, I don't know, not my kids, I don't sleep in, but, or at least didn't have to get up with the bell at 5:30.
Any other comments on the calendar?
So we will survey and bring you back data with a proposal.
Can we make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the calendar for first reading as submitted?
Yes.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right. Unanimous. And
Thank you.
School choice, vote to participate in 2019-2020.
So again, this is just, you're not talking numbers, grades, you're literally voting to participate in school choice. And again, as long as we have a situation where we have students leaving the district, I will always recommend to you that we accept students on a limited basis as space allows, but it does not become a priority.
Yep, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the Triton Regional Schools District's participation in the Massachusetts School Choice Program for the 2019-2020 school year, with total seats available to be determined based upon enrollments determined by June.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? All right. Perfect. And
thank you.
Moving on to appointments to the Whittier Regional Tech School Committee. So we received a notification in, I think it was early January, that 2 members of the Whittier School Committee, who we are responsible for appointing, would have their terms expire at the end of March. At that time, I contacted both of those the folks currently sitting in those seats to see if they would be interested in continuing to serve in that capacity. And also, we made a note in the paper, publicized it here at the school committee meetings, in a variety of places to see if anyone else in the public was desirous to serve in those positions. I asked to have letters in by the end of January. I received 2 letters, both from the folks who are currently serving in those positions, because they would like to continue serving in those positions. So you have in your packet on pages 119 and 120 letters of interest from David Irving for the Rowley School Committee, Whittier School Committee seat, and from Alana Gilbert for the Salisbury Whittier School Committee seat. So at this point, unless there's further discussion, I would ask that we have a motion to appoint those representatives to the seats. I believe we need 2 individual motions.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Making a motion to appoint
Elena Gilbert.
Elena Gilbert to the Salisbury seat on the Whittier School Committee. Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? All right. And can I get a motion to appoint David Irving to the Rowley seat on the Whittier School Committee?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that one? All right. All in favor? Great. So I will notify Alana and David that they win, yes, that they have been reappointed to their seats, and thank them for their service, because obviously it is a big commitment, and I'm happy that they're continuing to do that. All right, moving on, Policy and Negotiations Subcommittee, that would be Dina.
You have, I think, 3 sets of our minutes heavily redacted because most of it is in executive session. We are continuing to meet. Our next scheduled meeting is February 28th. However, I do want to bring your attention to the January 17th minutes. We had a discussion on what information school committee members would like to receive. We had briefly touched upon this before. I believe Paul had brought this up. Student performance in aggregate over 5 years in AP classes by content, as well as cell phone use policy. So I wanted to bring that up for discussion here tonight to see how we want to move forward with that.
So, I mean, I know this was discussed at the workshop. Can you just give us a little background on exactly what was discussed at the PNN meeting so that we know kind of have a guide for our conversation here?
As I said, Paul had brought this up at a full school committee meeting probably several months ago now about what asking for information. So it was sent to PNN for further discussion. We all like the idea and think that we as a committee need to decide what information we're looking for. AP classes, well, Paul, I'll let you give a synopsis of what we're looking for.
I was just seeking a better understanding of how well the AP courses are performing so that we can kind of assess whether or not we're using our resources well as a district. So if, you know, the classes are performing well and the kids are doing well, then great. If they're not, then maybe we should reconsider some or all of the AP courses, that's all.
Is that a report that can be generated without student privacy concerns?
Talked about this. If it's, right, so if it's total numbers of students scoring a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 by topic, that number, that information can be produced, yes.
Okay. Okay. So obviously PNN thought that this was a valid idea. Would this be something that's shared within PNN first as a report, or is it something that would be included as part of a standard reporting that comes before the committee?
Right. It would be to the full committee at this point.
And at what time?
Yeah, well, we didn't talk about standard, like, routine reporting. We talked about it as a discussion point.
Oh, it's a one-time discussion point? Is that
I'm not
an annual discussion point?
We had talked about it as information to go to the PNN to have a discussion versus using, I think the term was a routine report, a regular report. It's not something that we report on a monthly basis. No. Something that's
necessary.
My goal was just to go back for a 4 or 5 year time frame and each and every course and see how it performed and just give the committee some idea to discuss this. And it may be that they don't want to, but it was just an information source that I wanted to look at.
Okay.
I think it'd be helpful to do that through the PNN and then decide, look at the report, if the committee's saying that makes sense, and then bring it back to the committee.
I think it should go to the PNN as well first.
It was my understanding we were going to do it straight to the full committee, but we can go to PNN first.
Okay. Time frame? Are we aiming to have this done as part of this budget process, or is this something that can kind of sit and wait until afterwards?
After the budget, I think is fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any discussion on that? Any feedback? No? And do you want to elaborate a little on the cell phone policy? I know that PNA has been working on that, specifically Mr. Goldner.
Right. That was just another thing that had come up before that we were charged to address, so we thought that that was worthy of looking into. It already is being, but yeah, we're just following up.
Okay, perfect. And I think it was in that same report that that you're going to go back through, that the superintendent's evaluation process was good, but hopefully we'll take a trip back through the actual document, because that was the issue, that was the concern that was brought up last year, was just the language.
The language and the relevance to what we as school committee members actually see the superintendent doing. We also were going to look at the our self-evaluation too. Quite honestly, with negotiations with PEC, that is taking the forefront of all our time. We will get to this, but we have more pressing issues.
Absolutely, and as it should be. Just say. All right, perfect. Moving on to policy and advocacy, Linda.
Okay, I am happy to report that our subcommittee has finished the manual with MASC. It's been a long process, and I want to thank the subcommittee members for all their hard work that was put into it. So I guess we're going to make a motion to, no, we don't have to.
No, so what we had said was to provide it, it's not on the agenda, to provide it to you tonight. Do a first reading in March and a second reading in April. So hopefully then you've got it 2 months. You had done A and B. I think A and B as a first and second, and I feel like C and D as a first. Those haven't changed. They might be like little random like edit tweaks. Thanks to Dina, aka the Red Pen Sullivan. So that has continued, but the I, J, and H are the meat. There are 4 policies that changed in I that relate to technology. I can provide to you separately. I don't want to put it in there because it's not policy. They reference technology procedures. So our acceptable use plan, there's a 6-page document that we kind of resynthesized that's my regulation of how those 4 policies play out. So I can provide that separately. That's just because that's a good reference point. And then the only other policy that doesn't exist in here is cell phone policy. That's a work in progress. I don't know if you want to provide an update on that, but
Yeah, we're working on the cell phone policy. It's going to take, we want to wait till the new principal is hired and have a conversation with him, as well with Catherine, as to what they would like to see. So I think it would be a coordinated effort between us and them, so that we can have a document that that they're able to follow and that the teachers are able to enforce.
And then the only other one that would be, the only other policy that would be a topic of discussion is the student dress code. Our dress code policy was extensive. If you look at the MASS, what we landed with through discussion was the MASS draft recommended policy, because what we have as a policy is not necessarily, it's completely unenforceable in regards to the law and what we can, and the 2 fingers and spaghetti straps, and it's not enforceable. So there is a bit of disconnect between the current handbooks, the way they stand now, and the policy as it's written. The policy as it's written in this manual is 2 short, very short paragraphs. So we can certainly talk about changing the handbooks as those are revised for next year to align, to better align. So we can put regulations that are more restrictive, but we want to make sure that we have restrictions that are enforceable, because there's no sense in having a rule that we can't enforce. So we need to stick to the language, which is dress that is disruptive to the educational process, a distraction. Those become subjective words still, but dress code has become a very challenging topic. So more on that. So the policy that you have is the MASC proposed draft.
So, yeah, go ahead, Dina.
So, Linda, if the cell phone policy, you said you want to review it after the new principal is appointed, so that will be reviewed next year then? When they come on officially, come July 1st?
I don't think so.
We'll be able to do work before that.
Sorry. We were wanting to discuss with the person who will primarily be enforcing the policy, the sorts of policies that they think they can enforce and manage in the school, and what their vision is as well. And so once that person is officially hired, I think we can start talking to them.
Great. So this could be enforced come next September, possibly?
The goal, yeah.
Right, that's
Okay.
the goal.
And secondly, if we are going to do this as a first reading, you said in March 6th or 13th? I need a date.
It'd be the 13th.
I was going to say why, but of course I know why, because it has a color code. We had said, we had said the 13th was going to be the regular meeting like this month. because hopefully
The actual business
be a
meeting.
lot more discussion about the budget on the 6th, and then on the 13th, it's simply approving a document that reflects. Are you looking at the bottom of the agenda?
Oh, that does not say the right thing. Oh. Nope. It should be, the 6th should be budget deliberations only.
Yep,
And the
and that should
13th
say-
should be the next regular meeting
Yep.
and the final vote, yeah. I didn't even catch that. Good catch.
So yes, Deb, we are switching them. Unless, I mean, we can do it on the 6th, but I would suggest the 13th.
I think we talked timing-wise that we need our regular business meeting to be the 13th to have that time, the preparation time that's required to do it. So, okay. Finance Subcommittee, Deb.
Oh, wait a second, I wasn't done
Oh,
yet.
so, I'm sorry. Sorry, Linda, go ahead.
This was the policy side of it.
Okay.
Now we
The
have the
advocacy side of it.
advocacy side of it, yes. So what we're trying to do with the advocacy side was, in Raleigh, they have a great pen pal program. So we're trying to implement that in the other 2 towns, as well as Newbury has this great Christmas card, as well as the Valentine. So we're also trying to get the art teachers in the other 2 schools to emulate that, but that probably will be a process for next year as well. And also, I don't know if Brian wants to give an update on the Student of the Month when we're going to, because I know that has been received very well by the teachers.
Yes, I mean, so the email came from Narissa, so I haven't seen a lot of the responses. You've been seeing the responses. So, I mean, we'll be prepared to take a look at those, and then I believe the process was you would rotate the members of the policy subcommittee.
And I'm up first.
So you're up first. So you and I will look through them, make a determination, and then that would be announced. I don't know if there's some vehicle where you want as a committee to vote on that. But I think what we had said was that gets a little tricky because you then have to make all the information public if you're voting on it. So we'll make the determination, and then if there's ever any questions about that, we can have discussions.
So I don't know if you want to give them any feedback that the teachers have said about.
Yeah, it's just been all around good. I mean, I have the perfect student in mind. Doesn't happen to be my student. Can I still nominate them? I've had nurses ask if they can nominate it. You know, I'm a nurse in the school. Can I nominate students? Absolutely. I've had people ask if we receive a huge amount of nominations, will we consider doing either maybe one per school, a student per school for every month, or, you know, how could that go down the road? And kind of my responses all along have been, we're working on this as we go. Nominate anyone that you think is worthy, and, you know, work with the categories that we have, because I think they're pretty broad. I did receive a lot of feedback from teachers saying, thank you for not just making it the classical achievement recognition. Thank you for recognizing the student that may not be number 1 in their class, but has put in significant effort to either grasp a particular concept or has gone above and beyond in completing an assigned project, just to the point that it's, you know, it's far beyond what that teacher has ever seen in for that particular project before. Things like that. So it was nice to see that type of recognition is there for students that aren't normally possibly getting recognized. So, and I actually had some of the special education teachers in particular say, you know, thank you for putting something out there that my students could be recognized for, because they don't traditionally get recognized. So it was nice. All around it was good. I've heard back from some people 3 and 4 times, which is terrific. So, but honestly, I don't think there's been one negative bit of feedback about it. So
I'll confirm with you. We'll go through the stuff next week.
So I just want to thank the committee for, you know, agreeing to this. And I've told Marissa that any category that we haven't thought about that a teacher comes up with, or we can just add that to the form, and just try and include as many different students as we can.
Yeah, there's a lot of standouts. I mean, that's one thing that's that's become apparent in those conversations, I guess, is that there are a lot of standouts in this school that again, it's not that traditional academic recognition. So they don't normally get recognized. And some of these students, it is day after day that they are going out of their way to make a difference. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we can recognize that.
I think that was the goal of that particular form, was to make sure that we incorporated more than just the academic standouts and the sports standouts and the musician standouts.
Yes.
So that's all I have.
Okay. Deb, you're up.
It's an envious place to be on the agenda. This time of year, the workings of the budget subcommittee are pretty much everything we do, so I don't think there's anything to add other than what we've already talked about.
All right. I know. She's the perfect finale. All right, and we had no no correspondence included in the packet. So just to highlight, the public hearing will be February 27th at 7 o'clock here in the library. The district communications meeting is at 6:30 the following night, February 28th. That'll be held in Rowley Town Hall. Budget deliberations for the full committee will be on Wednesday, March 6th at 7 p.m., also here in the library. And then the final vote on the fiscal year 20 budget will be Wednesday, March 13th, also here at 7 p.m. So I look forward to seeing you all the 27th. And may I please have a motion to adjourn?
Make motion to adjourn.
I'll
Second it. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great night.